Formula One Philosophy. A show for geeks, by geeks, done by nerds? I don't know.
I resent that.
Well, technically, I'm in control of recording, so that would mean I'm the nerd.
But we've established that you're a 30-year-old boomer. So it doesn't really count. You're just the one that wanted to do this, so you get stuck with the recording. And that's why it sounds terrible.
Thanks. Wow. Just comes out of the gate swinging.
You don't give me much choice.
I do have a punchable face in your defense. Now get off my lawn.
Yes.
This episode is about the Spanish Grand Prix. This is our recap. This is part 1, The Good, as we've been doing things this year. Part 1 encompasses all the good stuff we saw this week. So this will be a relatively quick episode. But first, Sean, how was your week?
My week was okay. Nothing really to write home about. I was off site today for non-work related or work-related meetings. And then tomorrow's Friday, so can't complain, really.
I could, because my week starts on Friday. But
go ahead and complain? Question mark?
No, I'm glad to hear that. Summer's finally here in province of Ontario. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. It's probably because it took summer forever to join us. And I was at the beach on Tuesday on my day off. And yeah, it was a good week.
Good to hear it.
Sounds
I would just love if it stopped raining every other day.
Yeah. Really nothing else to say to that. Yeah, it's just been a shitty wannabe spring here in Ontario.
Yeah.
All right, well, enough about the weather. We're not that type of friends. Like, when have we ever bantered about the weather? Yeah, I can't think of it either.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I'm usually trying to talk you off the ledge so we don't get to the weather.
Okay, apparently it's Let's Roast Nick today. The roast of Nick McKiley, or also known as the Spanish Grand Prix recap, The Good. One of the two.
Or any random Thursday.
Anyway.
Back on topic.
Oscar Piastri, 5 wins now this year. Another solid, dominant performance. There was question as to whether he was going to win or not, but we'll get to that in part 2. But I would still like to say that he was a clear favorite until that safety car. And that will start off my good, which is Oscar, Lando, McLaren, to me. But before I elaborate on that, what did you think overall about the race, and what were some of your goods?
Oscar is definitely there. Yeah, I'm looking at the points tally in front of me now. And since the first race, where obviously he had an issue and ended up with 2 points, every other race he has either been in first place or in third. And he has, let me confirm this, in the 2 sprint races we've had, he's coming second in both. So this is Max Verstappen 2023 territory? Or 23 territory. It's impressive.
He only comes second in sprint races. That's funny. You're absolutely right. He's either first or third and then second in the sprint race. That's hilarious.
Yes. Yep.
Wow. Good catch.
If you can't be good, be consistent. But in Oscar's case, he's both, which is phenomenal.
For his third year. For a third-year driver, yep. That's. I thought next year was going to be this. I legitimately did. I thought this year was just going to be some more fine-tuning, but to come out of the gate and just gallop to the finish, for a horse racing analogy, is just insane. I would say he's the favorite to win the title now, for sure. We're almost 10 races in, so if he isn't the favorite, I don't know who is.
Yeah, exactly. So he's definitely on my list of goods. I have Hulkenberg in the good for obvious reasons. What else did we see this weekend? Ferrari came back. I don't know if I'll necessarily put them in a good, but they'll get an honorable mention.
A meh. Yeah, that's what
And
I've had them too.
yeah, and then the race in general, I thought was just fantastic. Barcelona is phenomenal, especially now that they've gotten rid of that awkward final chicane. It cleans up the lap so much, and this can't be the last time we're at this track. Like to lose a proper Grand Prix circuit like this is just going to ruin the sport. So I hope that we have more years in Barcelona, which is not Barcelona, but you get the point.
Yeah. Hopefully it can come back as the European Grand Prix. Back when Spain had 2 Grand Prix and one was called Europe. Because it used to be Jerez or Valencia. Because you're right. When was the last time you saw a Grand Prix where pit stop strategy became so important? You know what I mean? Like they tried so hard to do that in Monaco, but in here you had a legitimate strategic masterclass that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. So they were talking about it during the race, and I think this is the first time since 98, I believe it is, that a dry race has been won in 3 or more pit stops.
Oh, wow.
So, sorry, this was obviously before we got to the conclusion of it. They were talking about the fact that Max was a genuine contender for the win, and it would have been the first time since 98 that happened. That being said, it still was one with a 3 pit stop strategy, but not an intentional one. So it's people complain that pit stops and pit stop strategies are too predictable and it ruins the sport because, as long as you know when to overcut or undercut, then it doesn't do anything. This is a prime example of when executed properly, a counter strategy can still produce a win. Not in this case, obviously, but the pack is so close together that there is room for error, right?
Yeah, and it was this was more the strategy the strategy kept the pace. We can put it that way. Whereas Verstappen didn't want to sacrifice any of his lap time, so that's why he had a 3. You know what I mean? Like
right.
you saw fast racing because of the pit stop strategy, not just a necessity because the tires might run out or may not run out. There was definite logic and reasoning behind these strategies. And you're right, that's what we don't really see much of anymore. You just see them going through... Sorry, I just wanted to say they go through the motions in other Grand Prix, and that speaks more to the track, not necessarily pitting. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was almost the polar opposite to Monaco, where everybody wanted to be quick because they know that you can overtake in Barcelona with these cars. And we saw some really nice overtakes this weekend.
Yeah.
There were some good audacious moves that were made.
Yeah, and Max on turn 1 on Lando, off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. Max on George, kidding. More on that later. What else was on your mind on that one? I'm trying to think there. Lawson on Bierman being lapped, kidding. Sorry.
No, but we had a bunch up the outside of turn 3. Like I want to say Russell put a nice move on somebody in turn 3. Behrman probably did as well. Alonso did a bunch through there also when he was driving angry. So I can't remember all of them because, again, we're too far out from race day. But going back and watching it, it's a good one to go and see some ballsy overtakes made from drivers trying to take the traditional line to block the corner, then being outwitted by the guy behind them, realizing that they have the grip to go around the outside and not risk it. Right? Because typically, like turn 3, it's that big sweeping right-hand corner. Typically, you want to push out towards the outside. So by hogging the middle of the track, you can typically avoid an overtaking move because everybody's too paranoid to go around the outside for fear of being pushed right into the giant gravel trap. But these guys showed that there's enough grip in that car, and they know it, and they're not afraid to hang it around the outside anymore. So what used to be a no-go zone is now a prime overtaking spot.
Yeah, I think you saw Verstappen do that on Leclerc, now that I remember, at some point in the race.
Yep, probably.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Did you want to elaborate a little bit more on McLaren?
I think they're just dialed in. We've said it a number of times this year. They're not making mistakes. They're not making the stupid decisions that they were last year. I mean, there's still plenty of time, and they haven't been error-free this year. But, I mean, the constructor standing speaks for itself at the moment. We're at 362 points for McLaren, and Ferrari is in second at 165.
So 197 points different, like
Exactly.
ahead. Yeah, it's going to take a major fuck up, I think, for them to lose the constructors at this point.
And people were hoping that this would be the race where it changed, because they brought in this new test for flexi wings, and McLaren brought a new wing that complies with it, despite having said we're in compliance with it now, and nothing changed. And I think Lewis Hamilton said it best, it's a lot of money for no impact. That's not the words that he used, but that was the basic gist of what he was trying to say.
Yeah, and you said pre-season that we will know who the champions are more than likely after the Spanish Grand Prix, or who is the clear favorite. And I think it's safe to say it's now McLaren, and for the drivers too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The drivers is obviously much tighter, but realistically, I don't think it's going to be, if the McLaren is that potent after this change, the other teams don't stand a chance. So even if form drops off for Piastri or Norris, I think they're going to get enough points that they still manage to get the title.
Yeah, if Ferrari's in disaster mode or in damage control mode and they're in second, I think McLaren can eke out easily another 300-400 points over the course of another, 15 races? So, yeah. Let's not declare everything just yet, but I think it's by the day, let's just say the odds are getting more and more in that favor.
Yeah. So, 15 races. So we're 9 in, and they're 190 points ahead in front of 3 teams that seem to be yo-yoing.
Well, one driver is yo-yoing, as we'll talk about in the second half, because doesn't really have a teammate. And I imagine the second half we'll talk more about what's going on with Mercedes and maybe Lewis. But I mentioned last week that Norris may have won the battle at Monaco and lost the war. It just seems like every time there's 60 laps of potential passing and overtaking, he's just non-existent. Or not non-existent, that's not the word. He's just kind of limp. He always seems to get passed by Max on turn 1, whereas Oscar, it takes a miraculous move. And I just think that speaks to what's going on with his season. It's that he's having a good season. He's just not good enough. He's not as good as Oscar. So I can't call him bad this weekend, but I will say, it's just, he's going to need a miracle, I think, to keep up with Oscar at some point.
Yeah. That's just it. Norris is not a bad driver. He totally deserves to be where he is, but he's being outclassed. And it's unfortunate for him. I hope Lando at least gets one championship in his career, but I don't think it's going to be this year. And we saw it this weekend where he was able to catch up to Piastri in equal hardware. They seem to be doing equally well, but every time he'd get within 2 to 3 seconds of Piastri, then by the next lap he'd be at 5 or 6 seconds again.
Yeah.
So it's like every time he got within sniffing distance of wanting to say, hey, I have more pace, Piastri would be like, oh, I found the rest of the pace I had. Right? Like he was just toying with him. So I think that's an ominous sign for Lando's championship hopes at McLaren as long as Piastri's there.
Yeah, you saw exactly that in qualifying too, where and Lando gets a tow from Oscar, and Oscar just kind of brushes off. He's like, "Yeah, cheeky." Lando sets a fast lap, but then when it mattered, Piastri set the fastest lap, and Lando faltered. Did not set a personal best, so we'll see. I guess we'll see where the rest of this plays out. But yeah, McLaren is it's all coming together for them now.
Yeah.
All right, we both had Hulkenberg in our good.
Yeah.
Have at it. That was pretty impressive.
It was impressive for a couple of reasons. So he ended up in fifth with 10 points, which is phenomenal for Sauber because I want to say now at 16 points, they're above where they've been in the last 2 years, probably, in the Constructors' Championship. And that's the closest Hulkenberg's been to a podium in a long time. And he, of course, holds the record for the longest career without ever standing on the podium.
Does he?
Yes.
I wouldn't know that.
Yep. He was very highly regarded through the junior categories for being someone who is constantly on the podium. You know, this thing that we've seen with guys like Max Verstappen, Lance Stroll. Who else was there?
Ocon. I think I know what you're going with there.
Ocon, yeah. So guys that were consistently on the podium all the time. GP2, GP3, Freca, whatever they raced in. Always winning, always bound for F1. And then he comes into F1, never quite had a good car. You know, I've heard people say he's always in the worst car. Well, no, he had some decent cars. He was with Force India for a long time, and Force India had good cars while he was there. Not winning cars, but good enough. They had podiums while he was there. He was also at Renault when Danny had podiums, or a podium. So he was always in podium contending cars, but always ended up in really shitty situations. Like the last time we were in Germany, when it rained, he was in a podium spot and looked like he was going to get it, and then just dropped it really stupidly in the last corner, and that ended his race. So he does hold that record, and it's one that, unfortunately, he'll probably take into retirement with him. But this was a great showing for him because it's not like we lost 15 cars. We lost, what, 2? 3 maybe?
3, I think, yeah. Antonelli, Albon, and somebody. Stroll didn't start.
Yeah, okay. So we lost 2. But he placed up there. Now, he placed 1 place higher because Max Verstappen went suicidal. But either way, he would have been in 6th, which is still phenomenal.
Passing a Ferrari.
In a Sauber. Passing a Ferrari on merit.
Yes.
Yeah. And now Sauber did bring a massive upgrade package to Spain. They're probably one of the teams that have actually invested in proper upgrades this year, them and Haas, at least so far. And it seems to have done something. Now, Bortoleto couldn't capitalize on it at all. But Hulkenberg seems to have been able to squeeze something out of it. The car did look better. Didn't look great, but it looked better this weekend. So I'll give it to them and to Hulkenberg that this was a great result for them.
It worked for Bortoleto in qualifying, just not in the race.
Yes.
Hulkenberg found it in the race because he qualified 17th, so it could have been a disastrous weekend for them. But
yes.
Something even I'm eating crow on is that his start, something you never see from Hulkenberg, was insane. He was up 8 places within like 5 laps. You have never seen Hulkenberg do that. And you won't believe me, but I'm rooting for him this year because simply because I didn't want to see him come last. I didn't want to see Sauber come last. That was a bold prediction by me, so I have been rooting for them. And it still like tings a little bit to see him be so impressive when I think he should have been out of the sport years ago. But holy shit, like he was on fire There was not a mistake, like you said, like the lapses of judgment in Germany 2019. There was also Brazil 2012 when he was winning the race and he spun off the track. He has those moments. It seems like the closer he gets to success, he just finds a way to fuck it up.
2013, would that have been when he was with Williams, or was that still Force India?
2012 was Force India. Brazilian Grand Prix, he was leading. He was fastest man on track for like 20 laps. Running away with it, one would say.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
And spun out.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's bittersweet to watch him do this, but you really got to give it to him. Like, yeah, he was helped a little bit by the late safety car, but I think he was still in 7th or 8th on merit. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Great race. Good job, Nico. I'm going to go quiet.
No, and that's just what I've been saying as well. Like, you have to be there to score the points when they're available. And would he have fallen back out of the points if that safety car hadn't come into play? Probably. But that safety car reset the game and gave everybody a chance to defend again. And they were there to capitalize on it. So I applaud them.
But not just limp like we saw Zhou last year with a virtual safety car and limp over the line in 8th. This was he went into attack mode.
Yes.
Which is shocking.
Absolutely.
Which is, not something you see him do all the time.
Because everybody came into the pits for new rubber and then could fight for the last 6 laps or whatever it was.
Except for more on that later.
Yes.
I think I want to just give an expose on how media speak, or what was it called by George Orwell? Party speak or something like that, or
Newspeak.
Newspeak, that's what it was.
I'm reading that right now.
Oh, you are? Oh,
yeah.
It's interesting. I should do that in Animal
1984 for the... Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I used to routinely read Animal Farm when I traveled. If I had a flight to Germany, because it's such a small book, I just take it and pound through it on the flight there.
And it's fun. It's a fun book. Like, it captivates you, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, F1.
F1 and Newspeak, the way they're reporting on Hülkenberg's position, have you been watching it at all?
I haven't paid attention to it, no.
New low point for Lewis Hamilton as he's passed by Nico Hülkenberg. That's the headline. For years, you've been...
No more of the super sub, yeah.
Exactly. For years, you've been telling us he's exceptional. But now to to kick Lewis Hamilton while he's down, in the early part of his Ferrari career, you use Nico Hülkenberg like a slur. Like, oh, you were passed by that guy? What have you been telling us for the past 3 years? I thought he was good. I thought he was one of the quickest.
Has been really fucking shit, though.
Okay, but that was my next point. Say Hamilton in low point passed by Sauber. That's not what they're saying. They're now, because it's convenient, treating Nico like the crap he always was, to shit on Lewis for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, why they've all turned on Hamilton. But it's just funny to me. Like, it sounds like a headline I would have wrote. But that's not fair to Nico after he had a great weekend.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just a window into the mind of the news media that I know we won't elaborate on too much because I talk about it all the time, but it's just another example. They'll twist it when it's necessary and they'll fluff it when they need to too.
I will say, though, that's the coverage that you watch. The F1 app is very much the opposite. They're still on the Nico hype train. Not in a grotesque way, but in the way that they're at least fair to highlight that he has this kind of shitty record that no one wants to have. But at the same time, his performance and his skill level have kept him here for a reason. That's kind of how the F1 app or F1 TV coverage paints it. Just more evidence that you need to stop watching Sky, Nick.
This is actually Formula1.com where I see it. Is it? Hold on. Okay. No, you're right. It's not. It might be Planet F1.
Oh, most reputable journal.
Yes. Yes, indeed. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This side of the Daily Mail.
Actually, MSN.com and AP. So I guess, yeah, it's more, this is more Americans being mean in New Low. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, you're right.
Without commenting on either of those two organizations that don't deal with F1 regularly. So
That's fair.
yeah.
I just think it's interesting. Let's talk a bit about Ferrari. Obviously, a podium, but at the same time, Lewis is not having a good time with it. So to us, they're in a meh. What's your take on it?
Yeah, he didn't do great. And like we said, he got passed by Hulkenberg on merit while his partner was on the podium. I think it shows that the car is potentially moving forward. They didn't have a terrible weekend. They had a reasonable weekend. I think they both qualified well considering the rest of the season so far. But Hamilton's definitely struggling. So I'm going to give it a meh as well. You know, Hamilton had some pace, but he's still clearly not getting what he needs from his engineer. He's still clearly trying to struggle his way into a setup. So, yeah, I kind of agree. It's just whatever. This is a track that he is phenomenal at and he knows really well. And he looked a little amateurish around it. He was not confident in the car. And to put it where he did, looking the way that he did, it's a reasonable effort. You can't say he's not trying, but clearly that car does not suit the way that he drives.
It was always supposed to take at least a year, I think, for adjustments, right? Like it was never going to be a quick transition into this team.
Yes. I think people like you and I know that, but the F1 media is fickle and they don't care and they want him to come out and start winning from day one. And the rest of the herd goes along with that. So it's not surprising that the narrative is what it is. But I think you're right. Like, we can't expect this guy who's spent his entire career working with Mercedes, right? Because he was part of the reason he got into McLaren was with the partnership of Mercedes behind it. And then when they switched and became their own team and McLaren was a customer team, Mercedes was the driving force that brought him across Niki Lauda and the relationship that they had. So him going to Ferrari, an engine that he's never driven in a competitive setting like this, in a car that is designed completely differently than what he's used to, this was never going to be a 9-race turnaround. And the fact that he won a sprint race in this car is impressive on its own. But I agree with you. We shouldn't be shitting on him too hard. He's coming to terms with it. And I think he's potentially a little downbeat because he realizes he doesn't have many years left. So he's trying to push the expectation because he wants to do something special with Ferrari before it's too late.
He's depressed that this venture is not going to be what he thought it would be. But at the same time, he has the right attitude, I think. He's blaming only himself. And even though I would say, even though I would say it's not him so much, the right attitude is to say, I can get better. The problem is he doesn't have much time.
Sorry, finish it.
He doesn't have much time, yeah.
You have to listen to how he talks about the relationship and the team in the interviews. When he was at Mercedes, it was always we. We've done a great job. We need to do better. He's flip-flopping this year. And depending on the race and depending on what happens in a weekend, you'll either hear we did a great job in the sprint race, or you'll hear they. They're not giving me what I need. or they're not understanding what happened, right? And that changes seemingly week over week. It's they and then it's we, and it's they and it's we.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily a notable thing across the grid, but for him it is, because it's been so consistently we when he was with Mercedes. It was always the team we. Now that he's at Ferrari, it's different.
Well, that's such a good point, because in a sense, he's probably understanding you're not part of the club that you thought you were. You're not in the club yet, Lewis. You either take over the team, or you'll always be the outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's learning that. And just my last point about Ferrari too is, if this is all Charles Leclerc really has after 8 years now, or 7 years at this team, is scraping podiums that he didn't really earn on merit every now and then, what the fuck did they do? Like, what the fuck was this entire venture with him? Lewis has genuine struggles that he could maybe overcome. Charles is hopeless. And I've talked about him enough. Lewis is learning a whole new engine, as you said, a whole new braking system. I think that's another major thing. He's going to have to work very hard, because he's lost a little bit of his step in age, and maybe even some muscle mass. Unfortunately, I hope not.
He's put on weight, muscle mass. He's specifically put on muscle mass. Most of the drivers have, because the minimum weights have come up.
Okay, well then, thank God, because that will probably help him. He'll need more strength. The point I was trying to make is he's going to need more strength as the years go on here.
Yeah,
to help bully this car into winning position, kind of like how Nigel Mansell used to.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can wrap up the good there. Unless you have anything else you want to add, any other last minute inclusions?
I have another kind of, let's say, good side of mediocre with Racing Bulls. So Lawson was useless again. Seemed like every time they cut to him, he was crashing into somebody, or borderline crashing into somebody.
Or ignoring blue flags, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But Hadjar quietly qualified well and hung it out with the big boys and scored another set of decent points. Like, we're not talking double-digit points, but he very quickly became a serious alternative to Yuki at that team, right? Like, after the 2 races when Yuki was put into the Red Bull, it genuinely looked in my books like Racing Bulls had a team that wasn't going to score any points. But Hadjar stepped up, and he has scored points in 1, 2, 3, 5 of the 9 races. So the majority of the races, he's scoring points.
Amazing.
Which is phenomenal for a rookie. And it's not Sauber level, sneak a 1 point here kind of thing. He's got 1s and 2s, so not 10th place and 9th place. But he's also got 4 points, 8 points, 6 points. So the tail ends of the points, but he's there. He's genuinely fighting in the mid-pack. So it's not a great result for the team, but hey, they've got a serious contender in Hadjar, and I think that's worth noting.
To me, it's a great result, because I genuinely thought my prediction of them being 10th after they swapped Yuki was a lock. Hadjar is
not so much.
Yeah, not anymore. That one's a write-off. Hadjar has 2 more points than where Yuki did at this point last year.
Yep.
And we praised Yuki, and I was definitely wrong about Hadjar going into the season. So yeah, good on him.
You want to know the scarier thing about that?
Mm-hmm.
Racing Bulls is 2 places down from Red Bull. The only thing that separates Racing Bulls from Red Bull is Williams.
Wow. Oh, so they passed Haas.
Yep.
Ooh.
Sorry, let me double check this. Yeah, they're 2 points more than Haas right now. They have to double their points tally to get past Williams, but they're there.
And who knows? This season seems to be all over the place. You can't predict it week to week. So they could turn it on. Maybe Lawson comes into play. I don't know. Doubtful, but I don't know.
We're getting into that point of the season where Lawson has come in the last 2 years to replace drivers, right? So we're coming into tracks that he knows in this hardware, so he may start scoring better points.
Sure. And
I'm trying to be optimistic, Nick.
so let's end this episode on optimism. Liam,
Yes.
we believe in you. All right. We will be back for the bad. Talk soon, everybody.